Shalom, everybody. Welcome to this week's Torah portion. We're still working in the studio, still doing some things from home today. We may be doing it like that for a few weeks, I suspect. But in the meantime, we just still want to continue to get some teachings out to you and want to continue to get some lessons out there for you to study. And even if you can't meet with others in your area, your vicinity, we can still find a way to connect and try to find a way to still learn from one another and still keep in contact. Okay. So let's do that. We got Tsav is the Torah portion for this week. Tsav, and Tsav is in Leviticus 6:8 to 8:36. The Haftarah is Jeremiah 7:21 to 8:3, and Romans 8:1 through 13 is a reading from the Brit Hadashah. Before we get started, I would like to go ahead and do the Shema and the blessings for the Torah. And since you joined in with me, I assume you won't mind. So this is how we do the Shema here. A lot of people sing it. We're not going to sing it here today, but we do it a little bit different. So if you have the words up there on your screen, I see them right there. Go ahead and join with me. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, b'chol levavcha, u'v'chol nafshecha, u'v'chol mo'adecha, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Yeshua Hu HaMashiach, Hu HaSar Shalom, Hu Adon HaKol. Amen. English would be, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Blessed be his glorious sovereign name forever and ever. Yeshua is the Messiah. He is the Prince of Peace. And he is Lord of all. We do a transliteration for the Shema up there, just in case you can't read the Hebrew. We do put a transliteration up so that way we can still kind of read and follow along with it. We can at least pronounce the words even if we can't really read them. You know, just part of your learning, right? Part of your learning. Well, the blessing before we get into the Torah, the blessing for the Torah is Baruch Hu Adonai Hamvarach. And the repeat is Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed. And then the blessing continues. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Michol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. So again, this parsha is Tsav, starting in Leviticus 6:8 or 6:1, depending on what translation you're reading. And so I'm reading from Leviticus 6:8. It reads, Vaydaber Yahweh el Moshe, le'emor tzav et Aharon va'et banav, le'emor zot Torah ha'olah hu, ha'olah al mukdah, al hamizbeach kol halayla, that's od habocher ve'esh hamizbeach tochad bo. And Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, Command Aaron and his sons, saying, This is the law of the burnt offering. It is the burnt offering because of the burning upon the altar all night until the morning, and the fire of the altar shall be burning in it. Blessing after we read the parsha. We're just going to read the verse to get into it. Blessing afterwards. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'hiyeh olam natah b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. V'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Israel al pi Adonai biyad Moshe. And this is the Torah which placed Moses before the children of Israel on the mouth of Adonai in the hand of Moses. So, like we say, this week is Tsav, command, and we started Leviticus, Vayikra, last week. And last week we started to see how the importance of the book, it's not just rules that are given to the Levites, but it is a book concerning holiness. It is a book about how you draw near to the Lord your God, and a book of what that means to be a holy people, which we need to know. You know, one of the things we've really kind of lost nowadays is learning to distinguish between the clean and the holy and common, and we really don't see a need for it in the most part because there's no standing temple, no standing tabernacle. We don't follow those ways of worship like that, so it's foreign to a lot of people, and it's very far removed. But how do we learn to be a holy people if we don't know what a holy God says how to approach? So we need to learn in the book of Leviticus, just for the Vayikra, for the sake of the priesthood, it's not just the priesthood. Vayikra is God calling out. And he's calling out to his people to show us how to be near to him. And that's what we're going to learn in this book. Okay, so last parsha, we went through the 5 different types of offerings that were brought, and there are subcategories, if you will, of the offerings that break down into that, but really just 5 types of offerings that are given in that. And this week we find that it's given instruction to the priest, once he receives the offering, what he does with it. And that's important for us to know as well, because what happens once the offering was brought? Well, we are to observe the process as well. And how are we to know? We say things like, Yeshua is our priest, Yeshua is our high priest, and things like that. But how are we to know what work he did for us or on our behalf if we don't know what the priest did? So again, just a matter of learning some things. Okay, so let's get into that. Before we do, I want to make a couple comments. If you do enjoy these teachings that we put out there, if you do enjoy the Torah portions, if you do enjoy these things, they're out there for you. It's free out there on the internet. There's many places online, but if you read them if you listen or watch, share them. Share them. If they're an encouragement to you, be sure you share. And there's a lot of different places where you can find us. Our Facebook page, Ruach Ministries. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Twitter, @Ruach Tweets. Our YouTube page is The Ruach Life, no spaces. And if you prefer Vimeo is a pretty good high HD channel. It's Ruach on Vimeo. And as well as to keep up to date with things that are going on, you can sign up for our newsletter as well. To do that, it's our main website is ruachonline.com. That's RUACH online.com. And there you can go to many different places, and it's kind of a hub for what all is going on around us. So without further delay, let's get into Tsav. So Leviticus 6:8 says, Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, command Aaron and his sons, saying, this is the law for the burnt offering. The burnt offering shall be on the hearth of the altar all night until morning, and the fire on the altar shall be kept burning on it. So we're learning about the receiving of the offering and what it was to be done. Once they got it, how they were to handle the animals, how were they to handle the korbanot, these things that were to be brought near to Yahweh. But what we find is there's a representation here of the animal that goes beyond the animal. Okay, the offering that was brought from the person was a representation of the person, and it was to be brought on behalf of this person, and it was what was put on the altar. The person was not put on the altar. This animal was put on the offering, or put on the altar, and then went within the smoke and the fire and everything there went up into the presence of Yah. And so the one who brought the offering could be represented by proxy, if you will, to Yahweh himself. So when we brought the offering, it is, in a sense, if our offering goes up and is received, then we are received. See, it is a representation of you and where we're at. And we find that because this is the Torah of ascent, and that's what we find here. And the first duty listed after naming the korbanot was instruction of how to handle the offering, or the first offering that was given was the offering of ascent. We say the burnt offering, but we know that the burnt offering, the olah offering, really means to ascend, to go up. And that's what the flame does. It goes up. So it is ascending to Yahweh. So really, this first offering was a Torah of ascent, and the teaching of how you ascend. Okay? So an offering of ascent would be a representation of how you would ascend spiritually. We find that because the Hebrew is Tsav et ha'aron et banav, to Aaron and his sons, le'emor, and say, Zot, this Torah is the Torah of ha'olah, of ascent. All right? It makes me think of the Song of Ascents when the offerings are given. Psalms 120 through 134 are the Psalms of Ascents. It's 15 of the Psalms, but just one of the things I want to show you here. Psalm 122:1 says, a song of ascent of David, I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. That's the focus here, isn't it? I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. And when we go to him, to his presence, do we just go there and just kind of stand there kind of dumbfounded? No, we go there to worship. We go there to hear his voice. We go there to honor him. We go there to be with him. So therefore, we must go up. Kind of interesting when you talk about going to Jerusalem, they always say go up to Jerusalem. And man, if you've ever been there, I don't care what direction you're coming from, you're going up to Jerusalem, all right? So these psalms would be sung and meditated on during the journey to Jerusalem, and they would be sung while bringing the offerings along the way. So if we go back to Leviticus 1, verse 2, it's from last week's parsha, it says, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, if any man of you bring an offering to Yahweh. Now, this is written kind of interesting in the Hebrew because it says, if any man of you bring an offering. So is the subject of these offerings the offerings themselves or the person bringing them? I submit to you the subject is the person bringing the offering because, again, the offering is a representation of this person as he brought it. That's why there were different kinds of offerings, different types of offerings, because someone could bring an offering, a peace offering. Well, it represents the person wanting to dwell at peace with Yahweh. So the offering they brought was a representation of the person themselves. All right. So let's look at this. So if any man of you bring an offering to Yahweh, grammatically, the way that the Hebrew should be written should be otam mechem ki yakriv, but it's actually written in the Torah as Adam ki yakriv mochem, which literally translates of any man of you when he offers an offering of you. So the way that it's written isn't just so if a man brings an offering, it reads, if any man of you bring an offering of you, showing that the essence, the subject, is the person himself. The olah was an act of worship. It was an act of complete and total surrender. And that's what we wanted to do when we came before Yahweh. Said, Father, I just want to come, I want to worship you and just to be with you. And I just surrender myself to you. I'm not asking you for anything. I'm just here. I just want to honor you. Okay. So let's continue along that thought. When we read through chapters 6 and 7, there's a repeating phrase that happens over and over and over. That phrase is Zot Torat. And Zot Torat means, and this is the Torah of. Okay, now the way this is written, the Torah in the Hifel form, the Hora, means to aim, to direct toward, to show the way, or to instruct. The priests and the Levites needed to be instructed before they could carry out their task and instruct others. Now, what we see here is that Yahweh is saying this is the Torah of these offerings. This is the teaching of these offerings. They couldn't just bring the offering in and just do whatever they wanted with it. There had to be order. There had to be specific ways things needed to be done. And so in order for the offering to be received, those who received it had to be instructed and taught in what to do with it. So Aaron and his sons and the Levites were to be taught the Torah, and they were instructed not just to learn it, but to teach it to the sons of Israel. And so it was important. Now, does that alleviate the sons of Israel from learning the Torah on their own? No, not at all. But again, let's face the facts. It's not like every person had a Torah scroll in their home. Okay, I mean, today everyone has access to a Bible somewhere, somehow, right? So it's good that we study the scripture. It's good that we read it, but understand there are those that were taught and trained in how to handle the word properly. And so we need to make sure that the things that we are learning are lining up with the things that the scripture is saying, clean, unclean, holy, and common, and listening to the words of Aaron and his sons and the Levites when they are teaching us the ways of Yahweh. When we are going to hear his voice, do we go off on our own, or do we seek wise counsel? And notice I said wise counsel. It's not just I asked some other guy and he agrees with me, so I'm forming new doctrine based on what this guy says. You got to be careful, guys. We have to be trained and instructed in how to handle the Word of God, and even translating, guys, how to translate, because we can take things out of context very easily, because we live in a different time than they did back then, right? And so something might mean something different to someone 3,000 years ago than it means to us today. So we have to be careful how we are translating and how we are applying the word. Again, that's why there must be teaching and instruction involved. So this leads to the question, are we willing to receive instruction? Proverbs 5:12 through 14, Solomon speaks of a warning if you do not be attentive to wisdom and guard knowledge. He says, you say, how I hated discipline and my heart despised reproof. I did not listen to the voice of my teachers or incline my ear to my instructors. And I am at the brink of utter ruin in the assembled congregation. It's a warning to be careful, to listen. Job 22:21 says, agree with God and be at peace. Thereby good will come to you. Receive instruction from his mouth and lay up his words in your heart. So that's good advice. We need to be able to receive instruction from Yahweh and his word. And the problem with that is when it comes down to, well, I'll receive instruction from God himself, but I'm not going to receive instruction from any man. Because Yahweh uses men. He uses his people to do what he desires. And sometimes he will use that brother or sister to speak something to you that you don't want to hear, especially from them, just to show you that he does use his people in our life. So you can't just cut people out just because you don't like them or don't agree with them or you have a different point of view. You got to be careful. And again, this is where wisdom and discernment comes in handy, and we need to make sure that we are truly seeking the heart of Yahweh, or are we just trying to seek our own desires and our own opinions? You know, it's like what I believe plus what I think about something equals my opinion. And we can be very quick to form opinions and take that opinion as fact. And that may only be a part of the truth or a piece of the truth, or it may be completely off base, but we do need to be careful how we approach that, okay? Leviticus 10:10 says, you are to distinguish between the holy and the common and between the unclean and the clean. Verse 11, and you are to teach the people of Israel all the statutes that the Lord has spoken to them by Moses. Malachi 2:7 says, a Kohen's lips should safeguard knowledge, and people should seek Torah from his mouth, because he is the messenger of Yahweh Tsevaot. So if we are seeking the truth, we should seek out his people to do so. Especially, and those who speak the word are held at a higher accountability and a higher standard to make sure they are speaking the word and not just speaking their opinion. There is accountability and judgment that comes with that. So, and again, it's just something to be aware of, all right? Example of the priesthood being teachers of the Torah and how to approach to worship Yah. We find a good example of this in 2 Kings chapter 17. We know the story. I'm not really going to go into it so much right now, but we know the story about the kingdom that was divided, and after the death of Solomon, his son came in. We read about Rehoboam, Jeroboam, and how the kingdom was split to the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. And the people that followed Jeroboam, they fell into idolatry, and just a lot of bad things happened. Ended up causing them to be sent out from the land, the northern kingdom to be dispersed into the world. All of this stuff going on, but there's a little more going on here. So let's take a look. 2 Kings 17 verse 6. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria captured Samaria, and he carried the Israelites away to Assyria and placed them in Hala and on Habor, the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. And this occurred because the people of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, who had brought them up out of the land of Egypt from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and had feared other gods. And they walked in the customs of the nations whom the Lord drove out from before the people of Israel, and in the customs of the kings that Israel had practiced. If we go down to 2 Kings 17:24, and the king of Assyria brought people from Babylon, Kutha, Ava, Hamat, and the Sepharavim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the people of Israel, and they took possession of Samaria and lived in its cities. And at the beginning of their dwelling there, they did not fear Yahweh. Therefore, Yahweh sent lions among them, which killed some of them. Verse 26. So the king of Assyria was told, the nations that you have carried away and placed in the cities of Samaria do not know the law of the God of the land. Therefore, he has sent lions among them, and behold, they are killing them because they do not know the law of the God of the land. So then the king of Assyria commanded, so send one of the priests whom you carried away from there, and let him go and dwell there, and teach them the law of the God of the land. So one of the priests whom they had carried away from Samaria came and lived in Bethel and taught them how they should fear the Lord. So what happened was the people were kicked out of the land, and other people were dispossessed and brought into the land. It was complete upheaval all over the place. But God said he made a covenant with the people, and he made a covenant with the land. So the people were honoring idols and worshiping idols and doing that in the land that God said was his land. So what happened? Well, he sent the lions among them, and there was things happening. So he's like, okay, so the people don't know how to serve the God of the land. See, they didn't just say the one true God, right? Because that wasn't who they were. They said the people don't know how to serve the God of this land. So let's bring one of the priests of this land that was here, bring him back so that he can teach and instruct these people who don't know anything about this God of the land, right? Well, it worked kind of, not really, because he did bring them back and he did teach, but did the people listen? What was the result? What happened here? So the result, 2 Kings 17:32. So they also, here's a word, also feared the Lord and appointed from among themselves all sorts of people as priests of the high places, who sacrificed for them in the shrines of the high places. So they feared the Lord, but also served their own gods after the manner of the nations and among whom they had been carried away. To this day, they do according to the former manner. They do not fear Yahweh, and they do not follow the statutes or the rules of the law or the commandment of the Lord commanded the children of Yaakov, whom he named Israel. Verse 41. So these nations feared Yahweh and also served their carved images, and their children did likewise, and their children's children as their fathers did, and so they do unto this day. It's amazing, guys. What we say is that, so someone came back and taught them how to worship Yahweh, and they're like, oh, that's good. So they continued to do these things to worship Yahweh, but then also did all these other idols, idol worship and all these other things too. It's called syncretism. They mixed the holy and the profane. They mixed the worship of Yahweh with the worship of idols. And you just don't do that. You just don't do that. So what happened? To sum it up, foreigners had been settled in Samaria by the Assyrians after the fall of the northern kingdom of Israel in about 721 BCE. An Israelite priest sought out and dispatched to live in Samaria to instruct the people in how to serve Elohim. What we find in 2 Kings 17:28 is that it says that he came to Bethel and he taught them. So, Vayehi more otam, the word more is the word hora, which is the word Torah that we're looking at. And so the idea here is all that going around the mountain just to say that it was one of the responsibilities of Aaron and his sons and the Levites to learn what the Torah was and to teach it to the people of Israel. And so that is established in the land and within the people. Okay, so how were the Cohen supposed to handle the things that were brought to them? Again, we need to make sure that the holy things remain holy. We need to make sure that the holy things are set aside as holy. You do not mix the holy and the profane. Okay? So if we go back, Leviticus 6:8 through 13, we read, So Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Command Aaron and his sons, saying, This is the law or the Torah of the offering of ascent, the burnt offering. The burnt offering shall be on the hearth on the altar all night until morning, and the fire of the altar shall be kept burning on it. And the priest shall put on his linen garment and put his linen undergarment on his body, and he shall take up the ashes to which the fire was reduced, the burnt offering on the altar, and put them beside the altar. Verse 11. Then he shall take off his garments and put on other garments, and carry the ashes outside the camp to a clean place. The fire on the altar shall be kept burning on it. It shall not go out. And the priest shall burn wood on it every morning, and he shall arrange the burnt offering on it, and shall burn on it the fat of the peace offerings. And the fire shall be kept burning on the altar continually. It shall not go out. So what we find is that the fire that was on the altar was just as important as the offering that went on it itself. Even before any offering was put on for the day, they had to make sure that the fire was good. Matter of fact, the fire on that altar was supposed to stay lit. We'll get back to that in a minute. But the altar needed to stay basically constantly in use. You know, before any offering was put on for the day, they put on an olah offering for the day. And then after all the other offerings were done for the day, they put on an olah offering for the evening. It's called the tamid offerings, the continual offerings, the offerings that were constantly before the Father. And so they were offering that every morning, every evening. They were continually to be used for Israel. Okay, so look. The burnt offering shall be on the hearth of the altar all night till the morning, and the fire of the altar shall be kept burning on it. In Leviticus 6:9, it says, because the burning, there's a neat word there for burning, upon the altar all night until morning. So if we look in the Hebrew, it's al mokdah. Mokdah is the word that's used there for burning. Al mizbeach, on the altar, kol halala, all night, od habocher, up until morning. So the word mokdah in the Torah, it's written with a small mem. You looked at? You see that? There is a small Hebrew letter mem that's written in there. It's like that in the Torah scrolls. And what that signifies is this. The mem is chaos. The meaning behind the mem is chaos. So this is, if we keep our fire lit on the altar, our chaos will be small. Aha. There's something for us. If we keep ourself with the fire lit toward the altar and continue in a state of honoring the Father and worshiping Him, the chaos within us will be small. Guys, you know, what have you heard? You have different natures within you, and which one grows? The one that you feed. So that's what we're looking at. When we are pursuing the holy, pursuing the clean, pursuing the Lord our God, we're not allowing that chaos to rule in our life. And so the things that we're placing on the altar, are they good? Are they acceptable? Are they clean? Are they holy? And therefore, it will keep the chaos small if we keep that fire burning, right? Also, the word kada means to bow or obeisance. So if we remain humble and we submit to His will, our chaos will be small. This does not mean a removal of opposition, but rather a presence of peace. This is not a removal of opposition. Shalom doesn't mean there's nothing going on. Shalom doesn't mean there's nothing going on around you. It means to have peace even though the midst of what is going on around you. Shalom is to be whole. It is to be complete in the presence of the Lord your God. So we got to keep that fire burning. We got to keep that fire going. Even in the night when it's dark and things are happening, we've got to keep that fire going. It has to be a continual fire. On the altar, we find Leviticus 6:12 and 13. The fire on the altar is kept burning. It shall not go out. The priest shall burn wood on it every morning. He shall arrange the burnt offering on it and burn on it the fat of the peace offerings. The fire shall be kept burning continually on the altar. It shall not go out. Even in the menorah. In the tabernacle, the menorah, it's Exodus 27:20 and 21. You shall command the people of Israel that they bring to you pure beaten olive oil for the light, that a lamp may regularly be set up to burn in the tent of meeting, outside the veil that is before the testimony. Aaron and his sons shall tend it from the evening to the morning before Yahweh. It shall be a statute forever to be observed throughout their generations for the people of Israel. Now, when he's used there, the Greek equivalent of the word is we find in Luke 24:30 to 32. For the burn, it reads, so when he was at table with them, he took the bread and blessed and broke it, and he gave to them. And their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished out of their sight. They said to one another, did not our hearts burn within us while he talked to us on the road, while he opened up the scriptures? So, guys, this is this burning that's supposed to happen within us, this continual fire burning, our heart burning, just this fire lit. We need to make sure that that fire stays going. See, Yahweh lit that altar. You go back and you read the story, you find that the fire that was on the altar was from Yahweh himself. Fire came out from before the presence of the Lord, and it lit that altar. But it is up to us to keep that fire burning. We do that by the offerings we put on it. We do that by removing the ashes. We'll get to that in a minute. We do that by tending the fire is what I'm saying. You can't just light a fire, walk away from it, and expect it to continue to go. You have to feed it. You have to make sure that the wood is in order, the wood is in place. You can throw so much wood on a fire that you can actually cause it to go out, or have so little wood that it won't catch, that it won't burn. You got to make sure air gets to flow through, how you said it. You got to make sure air flows through. Again, that talks about like the Ruach, right? You got to make sure air flows through. There's a lot in there. So we have to make sure that we tend the fire in our hearts, tend that fire within us, so that we keep that continual sense of being in his holy presence and putting our lives on that altar, okay? So it says that he shall take up the ashes to which the fire has reduced the burnt offering on the altar and put them beside the altar. Again, kind of interesting, because it says the fire has reduced the burnt offering. So we read, Vaharim et hadeshen. Deshen is ashes. Osher. Tochel. Tochel is interesting. It says that it's consumed or reduced the burnt offering. Tochel ha'esh is the fire. Et ha'olah, that it ascends. What we're looking at here is that word tochel is the word ochel, which also means food or eat. So when he's saying that this fire, the wood we put on the altar, this fire consumes that offering. I'm not saying literally this fire eats the offering. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that this fire is a whole consuming for this offering, and it burns it completely down to ash. Now, if you have this animal that was put on the altar and you burn it completely down to ash, can you take it and remold it, refashion it, put it back together again, and make it back into that animal? No, you cannot. So it was offered, it was done, it served its purpose. Now what? Now what has to happen? Okay, so a few things we look at there. So it says, then he shall take off his garments and put on other garments and carry the ashes outside the camp to a clean place. Check it out, guys, because he says he is to take off the garments and put on other garments. He is to take off the garments that he had and put on new garments for the day before he can take the ashes out. That symbolizes something for us, guys. So we look at this. When we come to the altar, are we doing this every day? Are we coming to him with old things from yesterday, or are we coming to him new every day? That fresh fire burning within us every day. Are we willing to remove the things from yesterday? Yesterday is gone. Are we willing to remove the things of yesterday and let him work in our life today? All right. Colossians 3:9-10 says that you have put off the old self with its practices, and you have put on the new self, which is being renewed in the knowledge of after the image of its creator. So the removal of the ashes was actually finishing yesterday's service. The removing of the ashes was actually finishing what was going through yesterday. It burned all night, but yet it wasn't considered concluded or completely finished until the ashes from yesterday were removed. That should tell us something. We're not ready to go forward for today or go into today until we let go of yesterday. We can't fully embrace today or what the Father's doing in our midst today as long as we're holding on to something that was or could have been or whatever. When we're holding on to the past, we can't freely walk into what he's got for us today. Much like when they came out of Egypt, they couldn't stay in Egypt. Sounds like a crazy statement, but that's what it is. When they came out of Egypt, they had to learn to live in the wilderness, let go of Egypt, and let the Father prepare them for where he was taking them, okay? So the service for today could not begin unless yesterday's leftovers were lifted up and removed. Lamentations 3:22-23 says, the steadfast love of Yahweh never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new when? Every morning, and great is your faithfulness. So we need to clean out the ashes. And what I've got here is the mistake that many make is they expect God or someone else to get the wood, carry out the ashes, put on the new wood, stoke the flame, to do all of that, so we don't do it, and then we get mad when others aren't doing it for us. So I have a cat down here begging me to come up. You might see him here in a minute here, guys. So what we're looking at is that we need to make sure that we are tending the flame, that we are tending the fire. Okay? No one else can do it for you. When you brought an offering before Yahweh, when you brought an offering up to him, you had to bring that offering. You couldn't assign someone else to bring that offering for you. You couldn't assign someone else to bring this on your behalf or in your place. You personally had to come bring that offering. And you personally, in many cases, had to sacrifice that offering. You had to slaughter it. You had to set the pieces out. You had to do that. You had to present it to the priest. And so you were involved in this, So you had to make sure that you were preparing all that. You can't say, I've got someone else to do it for me, and then get upset when the way life is going you don't think should be. There are some things in life that people can do some things for you. There are some things that Yahweh has said you have to do. And and especially in our spiritual walk, especially in our relationship with him, especially in our obedience to Yah, nobody else can do it for you. I'm reminded of the story of the 10 virgins, 5 wise, 5 foolish. Notice they were all virgins. They all went out and waiting for the bridegroom. They initially all had fire and oil for their lamps. But when the time came, go out and meet the bridegroom because he's coming. 5 got up, added the oil, trimmed their wicks, and did that. And then the other 5 said, our fire's going out. We need more oil. Give us some oil. And they said, no, you get your own oil. That sounds kind of harsh, doesn't it? But understand, guys, there are some things nobody else can do for you. Okay? You have to do this in order for you to grow in your life and in your walk with the Father. Especially when it comes to being presented before him, you have to lay your life down. You can't come and lay somebody else's life down on the altar. You lay your life down, okay? So Leviticus 6:13, about the fire. The fire shall ever be burning upon the altar. And here's something interesting. If you keep your, quote, fire lit, it shall never go out. Let's look at this, okay? So again, in the Hebrew, Esh tamid tochad al hamizbeach lo techava. Now, interesting here, because lo could be not or also your negative aspects. Tichbe could be, it will be extinguished. So it says the fire will ever be burning upon the altar. Could also be that on the altar, if you do this, it will extinguish your negative aspects. It's like burning out the dross, so to speak, burning those things out. So lo tichbe, do not intentionally put out the fire, either by water or by smothering. Do not neglect the fire so that it dies out. How do we do that? By not providing fresh wood, by providing kindling when needed, by properly placing the wood so there is proper airflow, by moving the ash away from the flame so that it does not impede the flame. These are things that we have to do. If we're to tend that fire, if we're to keep that fire burning, nobody else can do this for you. Again, it's up to us to lay our life down. Back to Romans 10:12. 12:10. Be devoted to each other with mutual affection. Excel in showing respect for each other. Never be lazy in showing such devotion. Be on fire with the Spirit. Serve the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in trouble, and persistent in prayer. So the question is our intent of how we present ourselves to Yahweh important? Like, if we approach with the wrong heart or have no intent on obedience, are we received? If we approach with the wrong heart, or if we approach just with the words, don't really have an intent on following through with anything, if we just approach and go through the motions, our heart isn't in it, or if we just go and we don't want to be obedient, we just kind of do what we know we got to do, the bare minimum of what we got to do just to kind of get through stuff. Again, Yahweh looks at the heart. It doesn't mean that the offerings were not to be brought. It doesn't mean that we're not supposed to present ourselves, but he looks at the heart. If our heart is not in bringing the offering, does he receive it? Does he receive us if we come before him half-heartedly? Yahweh, Father, creator of heaven and earth, I give you my Mondays. Mondays are normally a bad day for me anyway. I'll give you my Mondays. The rest of the week is mine. No. So when we come before him, we must have the heart to surrender completely and lay our lives down for him, right? Okay. Ecclesiastes 5:1-7 says, watch your step when you go to the house of God. Offering to listen is better than fools offering sacrifices. Because, notice it's not just, notice this didn't say that fools bring sacrifice. He's like, offering to listen is better than fools who do bring the sacrifices. In other words, they're not saying they're foolish for bringing the sacrifices. What he's saying is the people have no intent on obedience and they're still bringing the offerings. Okay, it's just an outward show. It's not in the heart, is what they're getting at. So, because they don't discern whether or not they are doing evil. Don't speak impulsively. Don't be in a hurry to give voice to your words before God. For God is in heaven and you are on earth, so let your words be few. For nightmares come from worrying too much, and a fool when he speaks chatters too much. If you make a vow to God, don't delay in discharging it, for God takes no pleasure in fools. So discharge or pay your vow. Better not to make a vow than to make a vow and not discharge it. Don't let your words make you guilty, and don't tell the temple official that you made the vow by mistake. Why give God reason to be angry at what you say and destroy what you have accomplished? For this is what happens when there are too many dreams, aimless activities, and words. Instead, just fear God. Wow. So we often hear things like, I can do whatever we want as long as God knows my heart, right? Psalm 10:13 says, why does the wicked despise God and say in his heart, it won't be held against me? In other words, the wicked say, I can do what I want. God's not going to hold it against me because, I said a prayer when I was, 3 years old. No, guys. Once we give our life to him, then we need to learn to walk with him. Okay. And we can't say, God knows my heart. That's kind of the problem. He does know our heart. And the heart can lead you astray. That's why in Numbers chapter 15, God says, don't go follow your own eyes or your own heart after the way it causes you to go whoring after other idols. He says to keep his word. That's why he instituted the commandment of tzitzit. And so the many other places, he says to keep his word because our heart can lead us astray. Now, granted, he gave us our heart and our will, our emotions, and all these great things. He gave us good things to use. But we're not to be led around by these things, okay? We are to make sure that our whole body, mind, will, emotions is submitted to Yahweh and his word. Revelation 3:15-19 says, I know your works. You're neither cold nor hot. Would that you were either cold or hot. Those whom I love I reprove and discipline. So be zealous, therefore, and repent. In the book of Revelation, when the letters to the churches, how many times does he say, I know your heart? He doesn't. He says, I know your works. So it's not just the issue of the heart. What we find is that our obedience is what he desires. And to truly be obedient, we must have the heart to do what he said. It's not just doing what he said without the heart behind it. Hebrews 12:28 says, therefore let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, and thus let us offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire. So when we go and we read the regulations for the offerings conclude at the end of Leviticus chapter 7, and we read this of chapter 7, verse 37. This is the law for the burnt offering, the grain offering, the sin offering, the guilt offering, the ordination offering, the peace offering, which Yahweh commanded Moshe on Mount Sinai on the day that he commanded the people of Israel to bring their offerings to Yahweh in the wilderness of Sinai. So what we find is that he says that this is the teaching of these offerings that are given, and these were given on Sinai, and they were given through Moshe, and they were given in the day that it was given. So it's not like, it kind of says it's given in one day here, it's not just like over a period of time. No, this was all given out about the same time. Interesting thought here from Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch. He says, on the day that he commanded the people of Israel, Bayom, in the word there for Tsav, Tzavutai, Zavatav, so Yom is day, just as the word of God itself differentiates sharply between the prophecy of Moses, the transmitter of his Torah, from that of all other prophets. We find that because he reads literally, pei el pei, mouth to mouth, ad verbo, I speak to him, umara velo tich, sorry, I can barely read that, guys, that's small, bachidat, bachidot. And so he says, I speak to him face to face, mouth to mouth, literally, and not in dark sayings. Okay, so the word did not come to him by means of a condition of a twilight-like dream, but to lucid intelligence of a clear, fully awake man. So in the same way, it is to the intelligence of a clear, fully awake man that Moses was to bring the word of God. And so, in the same way, Halakha teaches it is lucid, clear, fully awake man with his wakeful, clear thinking and free-willed mind who is to come near to God with the expression of dedicating himself to carry out his laws. What he's saying is that when the word was given of how to do these, they were given in the day, in the same day. They were given in full light, full view. They were given where all could see, all could comprehend, all could understand. And they weren't given when we were like in this half asleep, half awake kind of state. They weren't given when someone was like off in a trance, or weren't given anything like that. They weren't in some dream state or some lucid state or in parables or dark sayings or anything like that. They were given in the day, and they were given clearly and plainly. And that's how the word was given to Moshe, and that's how the word was received to the people of Israel. And so when we come to honor and worship Yahweh, we are to do the same. We are to make the clear, conscious decision, I will surrender my life to him, and I will give myself to him, and I will keep his covenant and walk with him and walk in his ways. We're not doing so by some dream, and I'm not saying God cannot use dreams. I'm just saying, because that's what he said to Aaron and to Miriam. He said that I speak Moses mouth to mouth, not like these other guys when I do speak in dark sayings or dreams or parables, riddles, things like that. So I'm not saying he can't use that. He can. But understand, when the Torah was given, it was given clear, it was given to lucid and completely awake. In other words, I am fully aware of what I am saying and what I am getting into. I am making a covenant with the Lord our God, and I will walk with him. I'm not just doing something haphazardly, not doing something half-heartedly, to where I can come back later and say, oh, well, I didn't really understand. No, we make a commitment to walk in covenant, and we learn along the way how to keep his ways and how to walk in that. So all the korbanot were done by day, and we contrast that with the offerings done at night or in secret. All the pagans, all the ways of the world, they either do things at night or do it in secret. But when all these offerings were brought to Yahweh, they did it in the day. There could be no confusion as far as who they were serving or who they were honoring, who they were worshiping. All the offerings of Israel were brought in the day. In the morning, there was a tamid that was put on the offering, that was put on the altar, and then all the offerings could be brought. At the close of the day, they put another tamid on the altar, and no more offerings could be brought until the next day. But those offerings that were left on the altar were to be burnt down to ash, but no new offerings were done in the night. The worship and the service to Yahweh was done in the day. Okay, so again, it makes me think of we're to be children of light, children of life, right? John 9:4-5 says, we must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. And as long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. And that's what Yeshua said. He said that we are to do the works of the day while it is still light. And guys, it's still light, even though the world is getting darker and it's getting to be a darker place. It's still light out there right now. But we need to be that light. We need to carry that light with us wherever we go. And to do that work, because there is a day coming when all work will cease. And what happens after that? Are we ready for that? So do the work of the kingdom and do what he's asked us to do here while it is still day. We got a lot to do. All right. So let's close out with the Aaronic blessing, the Aaronic benediction, found in Numbers chapter 6, verses 24 through 26. We read that Yahweh had told Moshe and Aaron that I will bless my children and place my name upon them, and when I do so, you shall bless them like this. Yivarechecha Yahweh v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Yahweh panav elecha v'yichunecha. Yasah Yahweh panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Shalom, guys. Tune in, and we appreciate you watching. We appreciate you listening. And please share, please like, and please help get the word out there, okay? So until next time, Shalom, y'all.